So as far as the business journey is concerned, we know all about the messy middle. You will know about the messy middle, the moment in time where you're just kind of in the mix of things. Nothing is necessarily solidified yet. Nothing is actually kind of running in autopilot. It's arguably a lot of stuff that needs to be done, a lot of stuff that needs to be finalized, and a lot of stuff that needs to be refined in the process in order for you to establish a business, especially a business that can generate revenue, right? But more often than not, we don't necessarily talk a lot about the buyer journey, the purchasing decision journey, and how that in itself aligns with a messy middle. You may think the messy middle just applies more so to your branding journey, but I assure you that there are other areas of the messy middles that we need to consider when we think about business from the perspective of a founder and also the perspective of the buyer, right? So for this video, I wanted to share a diagram that has been around for years, to be fair. It's a principle that's been around for quite a while, but I still think that it really still plays a part when it comes down to understanding the purchasing decisions for your ICP. Because let's face it, of course, we would love for the opportunity for it to be very much a straight line from awareness to purchasing, right, as far as business is concerned. But that's not how it goes. That's not how it goes. And especially with there being so many sort of competitors and there's so many people within a set of niches or industries per se, you always need to be positioned as the key person of influence within your ecosystem and you're the obvious choice when it comes down to someone ultimately saying that they will pay you for whatever it is that you're offering as a service. So I'm going to go through the whole process and just share my sort of expertise as far as brand authority is concerned and how you can effectively ensure that whoever you get within your ecosystem as far as a ideal client is concerned, you know how to get them from the stage of just being somewhat interested to actually being immersed in wanting to purchase from you, right? So before I get started, please like, comment, and subscribe on this video. As you may or may not know, I post videos every single day on marketing, PR, and brand authority. And brand authority for me is your personal brand multiplied by your business brand multiplied by your campaign brand. I believe that gives you a level of brand authority, that gives you that level of visibility and credibility that can attract your target audience in order to get more leads, which in turn will become more clients and in ultimately getting you more revenue for your business. So let's just go. Let me share my screen. So this is the actual document or the actual sort of diagram that is on the Google website as well when it talks about the idea of the messy middle. So excuse me if you see me looking left and right because I actually have the diagram on this screen here, so I may be looking there, but rest assured I'm not thinking, I'm not looking around. Don't think I'm a crazy person in that sense. But if we look at it from here as well, so what we have here is the exposure circle. So even if we start with the exposure circle, it is important for you to understand that you have to consider the exposure circle as the ideal client or the prospect entering the ecosystem, right? So whatever you're doing, whether it comes down to the content side or whether it comes down to you posting about your particular sort of role or the service that you provide on LinkedIn, for example, or social media platforms as a whole, there are things in place that you'll be doing which will allow people to then enter your ecosystem in the form as exposure. So it is only until that particular prospect enters that particular part of it, your exposure, where you then understand, okay, they are in your world now. So if I put this here, so cool. So you have the exposure line all across there, right? And then when we start with the triggers, the trigger is that spark, right? It's that spark that disrupts the status quo, you can call it. It's a pain point that allows that person to then be like, okay, we understand that we know this person now. We think they could potentially help us in what we need from them, right? So that particular thing is triggered by a pain point, whether it comes down to a lack of sales, lack of leads, or lack of prospects, or lack of, in my sort of remit, a lack of visibility and credibility. That is what ultimately leads to that trigger point, right? And then from there, you get to the part where as you fall down the trigger section, you then get into a sort of infinite loop of exploration and evaluation, right? So this can go on. This part is particularly important because this can literally go around in circles and circles and circles for a very long time. As far as exploration is concerned, that is how the people, i.e., your prospects or your ideal clients, are able to find you based on Google search results, LinkedIn recommendations, reviews, all those particular things, right? And then as we go to the evaluation side, that's basically how they're able to narrow you down to your competitors or other people within your niche or your industry. So from that moment, they may be asking for particular things like testimonials, or they may come across any potential case studies, right? And throughout that situation is literally a loop until ultimately they get to the point where they are now ready to make the purchase because they have now verified within themselves that you are actually the person that they believe can help them in whatever issue they have at that particular moment in time, right? Which will then lead to the purchase. And once you get to that point of that purchase, then it is in your best interest to ensure that you do your utmost best in terms of providing that level of experience, right? So you provide that level of experience for your client, right? To get them to the point where they remain within your ecosystem of exposure. And more often than not, if you do a fantastic job as well, and they have other sort of friends, colleagues, or whoever the case within the same sort of niche or industry that they're in, and they're also interested in that support, it is through you getting the additional testimonial, the additional feedback, and the additional sort of praise and referral, which will then allow people to then drive more people into your ecosystem through that level of exposure. So in that side of things, the exposure hits through peer-to-peer recommendation, right? But then what is quite interesting that we need to cover is that with the trigger being established through the idea of the pain point, and then this is where I say that the personal brand alongside your business brand is incredibly important, because as you fall within the trigger section, you're in an infinite loop, as I mentioned, between exploration and evaluation. And more often than not, when you think about what is actually involved from when it comes down to the exploration standpoint, you will then understand that this more or less is aligned with your personal brand. It aligns with your personal brand because the exploration part is how people are able to find you, how people are able to discover your work, how people are able to compare your work, right? In terms of you being more visible and people being able to gravitate towards you more. So even for an example for myself, me dropping this daily long form content on YouTube every single day reaffirms the idea of people being able to explore who I am. They're able to explore my content through me talking about brand authority, marketing, and PR. They are now in a position where within YouTube being just not one part of my ecosystem per se, they have video content that you can effectively binge and watch so much of my content to get an understanding of who I am, what I do, what I talk about often, and my areas of expertise, right? Which is, as I mentioned, brand authority, marketing, and PR. So alongside that, that level of exploration is only one side when it comes down to YouTube. But as I mentioned, when I work with clients, I work with them across the primary platforms, which is LinkedIn, Substack, and YouTube. So when you have a level of exploration that can be applied through those three core platforms, whilst it's amplified across the secondary platforms like the YouTube Shorts, the Instagram Reels, or the TikTok, or any additional sort of secondary platforms you can incorporate, you then begin to understand how all of that leads to a loop of understanding who you are as an individual, right? You become more likable. People gravitate towards you more because you have stuff to say, and hopefully you are making sense of the things that you have to say, right? So then when it comes back to that loop now, you have to think of that loop always being a thing that you need to continue to develop and continue to reinforce and to continue to invest in. Because, for example, from the PR standpoint, the more coverage that you get in reputable sources and publications and broadcasters and podcasters, this ensures that when people are in a position where they explore your content and they are able to not only verify that you are the person that you say you are, but then you are able to then gain from that level of third party credibility, which I talk about in order for you to get those opportunities, right? As I mention all the time, I could be saying that I'm an amazing chef or amazing cook, but if I'm just saying it based on me, you may say that I'm arrogant. But then if I am positioned in various different cooking publications per se, or interview led publications where they have a spotlight on me and they are referring to me as the best cook in the United Kingdom, I'm not. But if we was to say that, that adds that level of credibility. So through the process of exploration, that then triggers the idea that, okay, that's verified. I am who I say I am. And then when we get to the evaluation side of things, I really feel that then that ties into the business brand. I feel that when you get to that point of evaluation, then it becomes a thing about, okay, we know who you are, but what is it that you actually do? How can we verify that you are the person that does those particular things? And through the process of the exploration, that ensures that you've then now been shortlisted, into the position where you're in the running to actually be selected for the prospect to buy your services and your offering. So when you've been narrowed down from that positioning, then it all comes down to the comparison side. What are they using to compare with that side, right? And that's why I say with the business brand of things, that is the most important part to now reinforce that level of credibility within your business. Who have you helped? What results have you been able to showcase and prove? What's your sort of methodology and framework and the way that you work with people? For myself, I work with clients using the Phases brand authority system that allows them to build that level of visibility and credibility, right? That allows them to be able to be seen as the obvious choice and the key person of influence for their target market who needs what they have to offer, right? So it's all that process of warming up the prospects from knowing who that person is before they even enter the ecosystem of exposure, right? And that's incredibly important. So these two here, if I do it on this side, are so important to refine and build over time and get right to the point where more often than not, it ultimately gets a lot more easier and faster for it to always drive down to the purchase section. And when if you're just starting in business as a founder or you're relatively new, this in particular will help you to then understand how you develop the necessary points. When a prospect or ICP is triggered to the point where they want that level of support, are you ensuring that you are in the right places at the right time based on people being able to search your name on Google, based on people being able to search your name using AI platforms like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude? Is your name there? Even with Google, with the AI overview, when you search your name, are people able to see who you are based on the AI overview? The rise of AI means that generative engine optimization, otherwise known as GEO, is just as important as SEO now, right? Consider SEO as the traditional way of being ranked high in the search engine results as far as Google is concerned. GEO is going to shape everything when it comes down to how people explore potential options. And through the evaluation part, you need to continue to always build up on the evaluation, always build up on your testimonials where you can, always build up on that proof, that credibility aspect that you are the person that you say you are based on the exploration. And then through the evaluation, you are the person that you say that you do. You do what you say and you say what you do, right? In that regard. And that will always guarantee that you are going to fast track your way into the purchasing factor. But then you always need to bear in mind that this part needs to be where you really hone in on your personal brand. And this part is where you really hone in on your personal brand, your business brand, apologies, in order to ensure that you build that system that just makes it a lot more easier for people to not only like you and trust you, but to also see that you can actually help them with the problem and pain point they actually have through the initial trigger, right? So that's just what I wanted to kind of cover today, as I felt that it was quite an interesting concept to go through, and why I always talk about the importance of incorporating your personal brand to your business brand. Because when it comes down to you building a revenue generating brand, it means that you need to develop the campaigns that can allow you to be at that level of exploration and evaluation. And the more that you continue to focus on those areas and you continue to build on those particular pillars based on what you know you need to do, whether it comes down to being involved in more podcasts or being involved in more thought leadership opportunities or interviews, or whether it comes down to testimonials and having more credibility sort of components to your content strategy. All those things are relative to ensure that you are able to get that particular prospect or buyer through that particular funnel in a way that makes it a lot more faster and efficient for them to pick you as the obvious choice. So that's it for me today. Please let me know in the comments if you find this useful and helpful, and make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. And I will catch you tomorrow. Peace out. Look after yourself.